Close your eyes and try to remember a sky you have never seen. Imagine an azure dome that defied the very concept of empty space. The heavens of Sagodia were not a vacuum. They were a vibrant, breathing sea of sapphire and gold. The sun did not merely shine. It sang. It moved across the sky in a slow, melodic arc, casting a gaze upon a world that knew nothing of gray, nothing of rot, and nothing of the silence that currently defines our lives. In that era, the light was so pure that shadows themselves were colorful. A red leaf cast a crimson shadow. A blue stream cast a cerulean ghost upon its bed. Act 1. The singing firmament and the pulse of mana. Before the violet mists, before the leeching shadows, Sagodia was a symphony of color that would blind a modern eye. It was an age where the heartbeat of the world was synchronized with the pulse of the great ley lines. These were not merely invisible threads of energy, nor abstract concepts. They were massive, pulsing rivers of mana, flowing visibly across the firmament like liquid gold, thick with the weight of creation itself. To look at the horizon was to see the very blood of the world. The mana within these lines was not a ghost. It had physical presence, molecular weight, and tangible viscosity. To look into a ley line was to witness the etheric weft, trillions of interlocking spirals of energy creating a golden haze that draped the world in perpetual shimmering velvet. In those days, gravity was more of a polite suggestion than a fundamental oppressive law. This divine buoyancy is why the architecture of the first era could defy every known rule of physics. Bridges of spun glass stretched for miles over chasms, held aloft by the buoyant pressure of the ley lines flowing beneath them. The very marrow of our bones was lighter then. To jump was to drift. To fall was to descend on a cushion of golden air. If the viscosity of grace was the lifeblood, then the fractal loom was its immutable skeleton, a multidimensional lattice of mathematical perfection. The geometry of these lines followed a recursive logic. Decay was not part of the original design. Things did not break down into chaos, or medium. They transitioned into higher states of order. This was the great mirror. The pattern of the great ley lines was reflected in the veins of a single leaf, in the scales of a dragon's flank, and in the shimmering iris of a mortal eye. The emerald artery governed the will to live, a river of liquid jade stretching from the roots of the all-mother tree to the furthest reaches of the azure coast. Under its constant bath, the forests of Sagodia became sentient. They were not timber, they were continent-spanning minds. The sovereign trees recorded every word spoken, etching history into their rings in a language of scent and vibration. Knowledge could never be lost, for it was stored in the roots of the world. Finally, we looked to the sapphire spine, the unwavering mind of Sagodia, a crystalline river of indigo and electric blue, flowing high above the mountain ridges. It ensured the world operated not by chance, but by a divine logic that could be calculated and trusted. Beneath it, water was so pure it was nearly invisible. It provided a rational hum, a background frequency reinforcing clarity, sanity, and order. But light this bright always casts a long shadow. Ambition is a hunger that grows most fiercely in the presence of perfection. In the heart of man, a seed was planted. A belief that harmony was a cage. Perfection, it seems, was the only thing Sagodia could not endure. The lightless trenches of the azure coast creating a grid of divinity that held the physical world in a warm, protective embrace. In those days, a farmer looked up not to check for rain or the migration of birds, but to see the flow, the glowing seasonal migration of raw magic that dictated the turning of the seasons, the fertility of the soil, and the very health of the livestock. Section 1.1. The viscosity of grace. The physical nature of mana. Rate medium. The mana within these lines was not a ghost. It was not a mere suggestion of power, nor a flickering spectral presence that required ritual to summon. It had a physical presence, a molecular weight, and a tangible viscosity that redefined the very laws of matter. It was a fluid state of absolute, uncollapsed possibility. To look into a ley line was to witness the etheric weft. Trillions upon trillions of microscopic interlocking spirals of energy, spinning with a velocity that defied mortal time, creating a golden haze that draped the world in perpetual shimmering velvet. This energy was so dense it created its own localized weather systems. Within the boundaries of a major ley line, the air did not behave as a gas. It behaved as a sentient medium. It felt like silk against the skin, a soft, pressurized caress, humming with a static charge of pure intent. It carried the ionized scent of creation, crushed jasmine, ancient rain, and the metallic tang of cooling starlight. Oh, when you walked through a high viscosity zone, the air resisted you just enough to make you feel supported. As if moving through lukewarm, silk-infused honey, leaving no residue, only a lingering sense of profound belonging. In those days, gravity was more of a polite suggestion than a fundamental law. The upward buoyancy of the golden ether provided a constant, subtle lift to every living thing. This divine buoyancy is why the architecture of the First Era could defy every known rule of physics. Bridges of spun glass stretched for miles over chasms, held aloft not by pillars, but by the pressure of the ley lines beneath them. Rate medium. It is why the trees of Alpheon could reach impossible heights, and why dragons, despite their mountain-like bulk, could hang suspended in the clouds for days without beating a single wing. Rate medium. The very marrow of our bones was lighter then. To jump was to drift. To fall was to descend on a cushion of golden air. But light this bright always casts a long shadow. Ambition is a hunger that grows most fiercely in the presence of perfection. In the heart of man, a seed was planted.